All I do is confidential, so
Good one. Come.
from other places to come here and teach, from IITs, and we even had people from IISCs and IITs coming and teaching, because we wanted them to be taught certain fundamentals in a sound way. This was in 2002. We started this coursework, but Dr. Ganesh was the chairman of the student committee at that time. Now I have a rethink, saying is it necessary and is it the right, thing to do, okay? Because of various requirement of the, academic requirement they don't have. So we created this as an internal requirement, and we insisted that until this is done, we will guide them towards those goals in that 4 or 5 years. Because, I'm saying, he was talking about this coursework and all. I said, I started this coursework in 2000. I don't know, but now I've changed my mind. I said, PhD students should not be given a course. I said, no, it doesn't have to be. There was a logic 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Today there is no logic.
ग्रुप फोटो गया
सुप्रभात। AcSIR की ओर से आयोजित इस विशिष्ट कार्यक्रम में आप सभी का हार्दिक हार्दिक वंदन है, नमन है और बहुत अभिनंदन है। आज के कार्यक्रम के प्रमुख अतिथि यहाँ पर उपस्थित हो चुके हैं। मैं जोरदार तालियों से उनका स्वागत करना चाहूँगी। साथ ही मैं निवेदन करना चाहूँगी आदरणीय डॉक्टर लेले सर से, आज के कार्यक्रम के प्रमुख अतिथि माननीय डॉक्टर शिवराम सर से, प्रोफेसर मनोज धर से और प्रोफेसर अजय धर से कि कृपया मंच पे स्थान ग्रहण कीजिए जोरदार तालियों के साथ। तालियों में कुछ कमी लग रही, सबने नाश्ता नहीं किया? तालियां बजती रहना चाहिए। स्वागतम, सुस्वागतम, स्वागतम। आज एक बहुत विशिष्ट अवसर है, बहुत ही विशिष्ट कार्यक्रम आज आयोजित होने जा रहा है। जैसा कि हमारी भारतीय परंपरा है, हम कार्यक्रम का शुभारंभ करते हैं स्वागत से। मैं निवेदन करना चाहूँगी निदेशक AcSIR डॉक्टर लेले सर से कि वे आज के कार्यक्रम के प्रमुख अतिथि माननीय डॉक्टर शिवराम सर का स्वागत करें। बहुत बहुत स्वागत है सर आपका। स्वागत की इसी कड़ी में मेरा निवेदन है पुनश्च डॉक्टर लेले सर से कि वे प्रोफेसर मनोज धर का स्वागत करें। आप सभी का एनसीएल में बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। इसी श्रृंखला को आगे बढ़ाते हुए निवेदन करूंगी डॉक्टर लेले से माननीय प्रोफेसर अजय धर जी का भी स्वागत करें। स्वागत सिर्फ स्वागत नहीं है बल्कि समर्पण है, हमारा आदर भाव है, हमारा स्नेह भाव है और आपकी जोरदार तालियों के साथ और भी अधिक प्रखर लगेगा। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत करना चाहेंगे। मैं सादर आमंत्रित करना चाहूँगी आदरणीय प्रोफेसर मनोज धर जी, डायरेक्टर AcSIR को वेलकम एड्रेस प्रदान करने के लिए। क्षमा चाहेंगे। मैं प्रोफेसर मनोज धर जी से निवेदन करना चाहूँगी डायरेक्टर NCL का स्वागत करने के लिए AcSIR की ओर से। तत्पश्चात सादर आमंत्रित करती हूँ आदरणीय प्रोफेसर मनोज धर जी को वेलकम एड्रेस के लिए।
Good morning, Namaskar, Revered Dr. Swaminathan Sivaram, Honorable Professor, Honorary Professor AcSIR Pune and Kolkata, Dr. Ashish Lele, Esteemed Director, CSIR NCL, Professor Ajay Dar, Associate Director, AcSIR, Professor Chetan Gadgil, Dean, Engineering Sciences, AcSIR, Professor Benudar Punji, Coordinator at NCL, AcSIR Coordinator, Dr. Ram Roop Sarkar, Coordinator, NCL, Dr. Monisha Fernandez, Chairperson, Student Affairs Office, Professor Kishore Srinivasan, I don't see him here, but all the distinguished scientists of CSIR, NCL, and their students, AcSIR students. It's indeed a great pleasure and honor for me to be here this morning. We have a lot of our AcSIR associated centers, around 80 institutions, and scientists, scholars and students who are working in these institutions are linked today, and they are actually online. So I, on behalf of AcSIR and on my personal behalf, welcome all of you, those who are sitting here in this hall and all those who are connected online. At the very outset, on behalf of the entire AcSIR family and on my personal behalf, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Dr. S. Sivaram. Sir, we are feeling extremely happy to have you here amongst us today. And let me say that today we have one more reason to be happy. We are celebrating the 13th Foundation Day of AcSIR, and there couldn't have been a better way to celebrate this day than to have a lecture by highly acclaimed scientist of our country, Dr. S. Sivaram Padma Shri. Also that he has chosen to speak on what you must learn which they do not teach you in the university. A title, by the title itself, I also got fascinated because I have spent my entire life teaching in a university. So I also want to know that what is it that I have not been able to teach my students. And maybe from this lecture, I get that which is perhaps needed to give a grand closure to my teaching association with the university. Of course, I'll continue to be the student of science till the last breath of my life. But obviously, I would also like to be a teacher till the last breath of my life, because it's a process which never stops. Learning never stops. And even as teachers, we have to learn. So I am here to actually learn what I couldn't learn in the university or what I couldn't tell my students as a teacher. So definitely this is going to be an extremely inspiring talk, and we are all looking forward to that. Sir, we are grateful, extremely grateful to you for graciously accepting our invitation to deliver the lecture today. I would also like to extend warm welcome and also express sincere thanks to Dr. Ashish Lele, the esteemed director of this prestigious laboratory of CSIR, for kindly agreeing to host this lecture at his institute. Before I come to the outline of this lecture series, just to talk a little bit about the personality with whose name this lecture series is associated. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, as you all know, and he is fondly remembered as the missile man of India and people's president. He was a true embodiment of resilience, vision, and dedication to the nation. Dr. Kalam hailed from a modest background, growing up in the small town of Rameshwaram, Tamil Nadu. Despite financial constraints, his hunger for knowledge and unrelenting perseverance drove him to pursue a career in science and technology. His journey from a newspaper boy to one of the most renowned scientists and the President of India is a testament to the power of hard work and determination, and thus serves as a powerful inspiration to people from all walks of life. Dr. Kalam played a pivotal role in India's space and defense advancements, especially through his leadership in the development of the country's missile technology and its nuclear capabilities. Beyond his scientific achievements, Dr. Kalam was deeply passionate about education and youth empowerment. He constantly urged students to dream big, think creatively, and contribute positively to society. His simple yet powerful philosophy, dream, dream, dream. Dreams transform into thoughts, and thoughts result in action, resonated with millions. Dr. Kalam believed deeply in the power of innovation, particularly in the realms of technology, energy, and sustainable development. Despite facing numerous setbacks during his career, he turned challenges into opportunities, showing that failures are stepping stones to success. He famously said, "Don't fear failure. Don't fear failure. If you fail, never give up, because fail, F-A-I-L, fail means first attempt in learning." Even as we know Dr. Kalam held such high offices and accolades, he remained humble, leading by example in simplicity and integrity. One of his most famous quotes perfectly encapsulates his quote, "Don't take rest after you have first victory. Don't take rest after you have first victory, because if you fail in second, more lips are waiting to say that your first victory was just luck. Unquote. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Transdisciplinary Lecture Series is more than just a tribute to this great scientist of our times. It's a platform to foster dialogue, inspire new ideas, and nurture the same spirit of inquiry that defined Dr. Kalam's career. By inviting the eminent scientists, AcSIR seeks to explore new horizons and tackle the great challenges confronting us with their visionary perspectives and inspiring approaches. We are fortunate that today Professor Sivaram is amongst us to share his thoughts, who is himself an inspiring person whose life and work embodies perseverance, innovation, and an unrelenting pursuit of excellence. I must convey sincere gratitude to our Chancellor, Professor P. Balram, former Director IIC Bangalore, Dr. N. Kalai Selvi, Director General CSIR, Dr. Rajiv Behel, Director General ICMR, members of Board of Governors of AcSIR, members of AcSIR Senate, for their continued support in taking AcSIR forward on the path of excellence. Although I know that you know AcSIR very well and you are an audience which needs no introduction about AcSIR, yet I would like to leave the podium by saying that AcSIR has entered its teens. We are celebrating the 13th Foundation Day. So AcSIR has entered the teens, and as you know, we have come out of the problems, some of the problems, of course, which a toddler has to face, which a young person has to face, young boy or a girl has to face. But now we have entered into another challenging area, because you know that teens are very volatile. So, and I feel that you are all fortunate that you are witnessing the teens of AcSIR, and I wish and hope that you will contribute positively, and as you will grow and become future leaders of tomorrow, you will perhaps remember that AcSIR started its journey in a very humble way in the year 2012, but in the last 12 years, it has made remarkable progress. At present, AcSIR is the largest institution in India so far as doctoral research is concerned, with more than 6,500 students registered for PhD program across 80 research institutions. And we have not only the numbers, but also in terms of quality. You and your predecessors, our alumni, have published more than 20,000 research papers in the last 12 years, which is definitely not a small thing to talk about. And AcSIR today stands at 11th rank so far as NIRF is concerned, and we wish to enter into the first 10 ranks of NIRF and go higher and higher. Of course, it can be achieved only because of your efforts, your contributions, your output. Therefore, I wish and hope that all of you, as students of AcSIR, as faculty of AcSIR, will contribute towards the ascent of AcSIR. With all these, I once again welcome all of you who are sitting here, and I again very warmly welcome Professor Sivaram and thank him profusely for accepting our invitation and being here this morning. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
धन्यवाद प्रोफेसर मनोज धर, आपने बहुत ही सुंदर वेलकम एड्रेस प्रदान किया और बहुत ही सुंदर भावना आपने टीचिंग और लर्निंग के प्रति व्यक्त की, जो आपके महान व्यक्तित्व को दर्शाती है। साथ ही आपने परम आदरणीय स्वर्गीय डॉक्टर APJ अब्दुल कलाम जी को याद करते हुए उनके जो प्रेरक वचनों को हमारे साथ शेयर किया, हम सभी को प्रेरित किया, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और कार्यक्रम को आगे बढ़ाते हैं। मैं सादर आमंत्रित करना चाहूँगी निदेशक एनसीएल प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर आशीष लेले सर को कि वे स्पीकर के बारे में हमें परिचित कराएं।
धन्यवाद स्वाति जी. Very good morning to all of you. It's a great matter of great pride and privilege for us to host this particular lecture series at NCL today. I believe this is the second lecture of AcSIR. First, I want to congratulate AcSIR for its 13th Foundation Day. And as you rightly said, Professor Dar, it is entering into its teens and a rather difficult age to deal with. But I'm sure with your leadership, AcSIR will overcome all the challenges, the barriers, and you will have full support of all the faculty from CSIR and now also from other institutions who have joined AcSIR. So thank you for choosing NCL as the venue for hosting this lecture. And who better than our own Dr. Sivaram to deliver this fascinating lecture. I don't think there is any single person in this room who does not know Dr. Sivaram. And I can say that all those many young people and distinguished colleagues who are joining online, there is again nobody who will not know Dr. Sivaram. But as a matter of formality, I have the great pleasure of introducing him to you. Dr. Sivaram is a polymer chemist by profession, and not just a polymer chemist, but the top polymer chemist of this country. He is a mentor and a science manager of great distinction. We all know him, of course, as the former director of this very laboratory. He today is the Professor Emeritus and INSA Emeritus Scientist at the AcSIR, Pune, and the Honorary Professor at AcSIR, Kolkata. Also a Professor of Eminence in Polymer Science at the Somaiya Vidyavihar University in Mumbai. His career spans great things that he has achieved, many places that he has been to. He started his career coming back to India at the Indian Petrochemicals Corporation Limited, the IPCL in Vadodara, where he built India's probably the first petrochemicals and polymer industrial R&D center. And then the leadership at NCL had the vision to pull him over to NCL, and we are very fortunate that he accepted that invitation. He moved to NCL in 1998 as the head of the polymer chemistry division at that time, and then of course went on to lead the laboratory as its director. He's a very distinguished, very recognized scientist, professor. He has been conferred with many awards. Of course, the most important, this civilian honor, Padma Shri, by the President of India in 2006. He is a recipient of the Gold Medal of Chemical Research Society of India for his lifetime achievements in chemistry, the International Award for Distinguished Contributions to Polymer Science, awarded by the Society of Polymer Science, Japan, and the Institute of Polymer Science, University of Akron, perhaps one of the most well-known, well-recognized schools of polymer science in the world, honored him with the H.A. Morton Distinguished Professorship in 2006. His own alma mater, Purdue University, conferred on him the degree of Doctor of Science in 2010 in recognition of his exceptional merit and attainment. And again, his alma mater, IIT Kanpur, bestowed on him the Distinguished Alumnus Award in 1998. Dr. Sivaram holds the Bachelor's of Science degree in Chemistry from the Madras Christian College, MSc from IIT Kanpur. He did his PhD in Chemistry from Purdue University, where he was supervised by the Nobel laureate Professor H.C. Brown. And then he went on to the Institute of Polymer Science at the University of Akron, where he did his postdoc under the supervision of Professor J.P. Kennedy. He is the elected fellow of all the academies of science and engineering in India. He is also the fellow of TWAS, Italy, and the fellow of Royal Society of Chemistry and the IUPAC. He is a technical advisor, consultant. He served on boards of many companies in the past and continues to do that today. He's also founder of many things. Venture Center, he was the founder, chairman, and the director of Venture Center. He has founded the director, he's the founding director of the Atal Innovation Center Society for Entrepreneurial Education and Development. He's also the founder, director of the Pune Hydrogen Valley, director of the board of iHub, the Quantum Technology Foundation at AcSIR Pune. There are many, many things. I do not want to take away time from him. We are all eager to listen to him. But I can tell you from my personal interactions with him for over many years, I have heard him talk to students, deliver lectures 5 hours at a stretch, completely mesmerizing the audience. At the end of 5 hours, you only realize that 5 hours have passed when you look at the clock. His lectures have been absolutely stunning. I've heard him in board meetings in industry where the leaders are listening to every word of wisdom coming out from him. I've heard him as the leader of NCL in RC meetings where he created the vision for NCL, and many of us today are simply carrying forward the vision that he has set for this lab. And there are so many other instances where I've had the absolute privilege to listen to him. I can say that there are very few people who have such scholarship, such pragmatism, and such coming out from everything that he utters. And today, you're going to listen to one such talk, very disruptive title, and I'm sure all of us are eager to listen to what he has to say of how students should be learning in, not in classrooms today, but somewhere else. With that, I will end here. Very privileged for us, Dr. Sivaram, to listen to you once again. It's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much.
धन्यवाद डॉक्टर लेले। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर प्रसिद्ध माननीय डॉक्टर शिवराम जी का परिचय कराना मतलब सूरज को दिया दिखाना, और आपने यह कठिन कार्य बहुत ही सुंदर और सरल तरीके से संपादित किया। आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और इसी क्रम में कार्यक्रम को आगे बढ़ाते हुए मैं आमंत्रित करना चाहूँगी माननीय डॉक्टर शिवराम सर को, लेकिन उससे पहले मंच पे उपस्थित आप सभी से निवेदन करना चाहूँगी कि कृपया इस ओर स्थान ग्रहण कीजिए। आदरणीय डॉक्टर शिवराम।
So you just move these chairs on the side. Can you connect this? क्या हुआ? पासवर्ड नहीं हो रहा है? can you इसको भी थोड़ा साइड में कर देंगे, इसको भी साइड इधर थोड़ा क्योंकि और आगे down this one, yeah, okay, fine, yeah, fine, thank you, I think that should be okay, yeah. Thanks to Professor Manoj Dar for extending to me this invitation to speak at NCL today. That's a very great privilege, one of the rare privileges, therefore I accepted this, because to speak on this podium is always a great privilege and pleasure. So for me especially, for having spent so many hours on this podium in my life, it's always a great pleasure to come back here and speak in this podium. The second, of course, was that when he asked me to deliver this talk, it was named after Dr. Abdul Kalam, and I said this is a great occasion to pay my tributes to him, because President Kalam, as we know him as president, but I knew him as just Abdul Kalam, and I had a great personal interaction with him for several years, and before he even became a president. And one of the rare privileges I've had sitting in the director's office is getting a telephone call on a given day in the morning or the afternoon, and I lift the telephone. It's right on my desk, not through my secretary, and he says, "Kalam speaking," you know. And that was one of the finest experience I've had in my life. The President of India is not connecting to me through his secretary, but he lifts the phone and says, "I am Kalam speaking." And I've had this great occasion of hearing this word, "I am Kalam speaking," many times in my life as a director of NCL. But at that time he was the President of India, but I have known him in his capacity earlier as the advisor to the Raksha Mantri, and earlier as the director of the DMRL in Hyderabad. So I've had this long association with him. In fact, my first contact with him was when he was at DMRL Hyderabad, when we were actually developing this nose cone based on carbon fiber composites. And that's the time I got to talk to him on some of the epoxy thermosets for carbon fiber that he wanted, and I helped him to source these materials, the right epoxy resins and the right hardeners to make the carbon fiber composites for him. So that was the history, but therefore I thought that any occasion that I can stand here and express my gratitude to a person whom has touched my life is a great occasion. And I start with this, therefore, that I think Professor Manoj Dar has already spoken enough about him, but one slide from my side. I think I call him a human extraordinary. You know, I mean, you can talk about many facets of his personality, but what is most compelling feature of Kalam is his humility and his ability to bear these great accomplishments on his shoulders with such simplicity. And I think that's the greatest accomplishment of a person, and I think the higher you rise, the more simple you should become, and that's what Kalam taught us. And I think that's a lesson that every one of us must learn, that knowledge does not give us arrogance, knowledge gives us humility. And Abdul Kalam believed in the power of education to achieve dreams, and I think Professor Manoj Dar talked about dreams, and he talked about a lot of his quotations. A quotation that I like the most of Kalam is, "A dream is not that which you see while sleeping, it is something that does not let you sleep." And I think it's a great way of talking about dreams, and I will have a few thoughts about dreaming in the course of my lecture today, which is not, universities don't teach you how to dream, and that's what I'm going to talk about it, okay? In fact, universities must let students have a half a day of nap, in order to dream, okay? When I went to primary school, in my early years of life, we were all allowed to sleep in the afternoon, okay, in the school. And I thought it's a great occasion to sleep in the school in the afternoon because, I think we must learn to sleep once in a while, creatively, of course. I think students must be allowed to sleep in the universities in order to dream, because without dreaming, there is no life. So that's what I think Abdul Kalam taught us. But the most cherished moment in my life, and this moment I could have never exchanged for anything else in my life, was this particular moment when he gave me this Padma Shri in 2006. Okay. Honestly speaking, pardon me if I'm impolite, I don't think I would have liked to have received this honor from any other president. Okay. This is the only president I would have liked to receive this honor, and that was my destiny. And I think this is a great joy because actually he's speaking to me. He has already given me his scroll, and he is speaking to me in Tamil. Okay. And in Tamil, he's speaking to me and telling me something nice. And I thought that was a wonderful moment in my life, and it's almost 20 years ago, but it's so fresh in my memory. So that's what Kalam is for me. So I think one of the reasons when Manoj Dar asked me whether I will deliver this Kalam lecture, I thought that there is no better place for me to provide my remembrance of him, my tributes to him, than an occasion like this. Well, Kalam was also in a way transdisciplinary. So in fact, this lecture that you have named in his honor is very appropriate because he was truly transdisciplinary. Honestly speaking, his knowledge, his understanding, his reading, his scholarship was vast and wide. Now, where did he learn all those things? And that's a question I think we all should ask. Where did he learn all those things? He was an accomplished player of Veena, a person who has read the scriptures in Sanskrit, a man who understood this world no better than anybody else at that time. He understood what this country needs in terms of power, soft power, created the nuclear capability for this country, was part of the famous event that happened in Pokhran in 1999. Now, how did he get all this thinking in his mind? He was just like one of us, right? Like you and me. And that was because of his fact that he was boundless in his curiosity. He was boundless in his energy. He was boundless in asking questions. And that's the only reason Kalam became Kalam. And I think that's what his transdisciplinary is all about. And that's what I want to say. And he didn't learn this in the Madras Institute of Technology, where he spent only just 4 years. Okay? Kalam just went to college for 4 years at Madras Institute of Technology in Krompet, and that's the only place he went to college. And I'm sure Madras Institute of Technology in Krompet did not teach him this worldview. Okay? This is something that he acquired on his own. And that is the kind of thing that I'm going to be talking about today. What is it that you should learn which they don't teach you in the university? Now, pardon me, I may be a little bit simplifying the paradigm in order to communicate to you. Maybe you have learned some of these things in your university. Well, it could be, but I am just presenting this as my thought as to what they don't teach you in the university. To a large extent is also because I didn't learn these things in the university myself. And therefore, it is a part of my experiential learning that I am trying to communicate to you. And if you can pick up from this a few ideas that you can use in your life, you may be better off in your life in the future. But I don't guarantee that, but it could be that you may benefit in your life if you pick up a few ideas from my talk today. Well, the problem today with students, not only today, in the last few years, I've seen the last decade or so, is students come with a very difficult legacy. Those of you who are students here may retrospectively look into your life. They come with a lot of passive learning and over-dependence on didactic memory-based education that discourages inquiry, that discourages questioning. This is something that has wired into our system from our 8th grade, honestly speaking, or our 6th to the 8th grade, We have become silent consumers of facts. On the contrary, today, with all the device that you have on your hand, you have become even larger consumer of facts and sometimes fiction. This is dangerous, because consuming fact and sometimes fiction, we don't know on your mobile phone whether something is a fact or a fiction, because you don't even think about it. You don't apply your mind, and over-consuming facts or fiction is dangerous to your life. And that's something that we have been trained to do, unfortunately. Children, from the day they are born, they have become consumers of fact and very often fiction. Belief that all wisdom resides in textbooks. An objective of education is to master a textbook. That's what we have been told year after year after year for 20 years of our life. Of course, examination as indicators of success have learned lessons in science in deep silos. And we cannot distinguish, therefore, knowledge from information. Most people think information is knowledge. If I ask them what's the difference, many people think before they answer me. What is the difference between knowledge and information? We seem to use them interchangeably, although they are completely different. But we kind of use them as interchangeably. We confuse very often information for knowledge. Well, it's a nice cartoon. This is what our system has made all of us. There's a guy sitting there, and he says, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb the tree. There's a monkey, there's an elephant, there's a fish in a bowl. Of course, there's a seal and there's a dog. That's all. We are all each one of us are so different in this world, born so differently in this world. And what is it that they are telling us? All of us have to take the same exam. Okay? In order to be judged whether we are good or whether we are not so good. This is exactly like this. Can a monkey and an elephant climb the same tree? Does it mean that monkey is any less than the elephant, or the elephant any less than the monkey? Well, this kind of tells you that this is how we have reduced education in the process in the last so many years. There's an attempt to resurrect it at this point of time. There is a bold initiative to resurrect this, but I'm not sure. I think it's too late, in my opinion. But if we succeed, I wish the next generation truly benefits. Well, the challenge is to transform the student's mindset and make her fit to undertake an inquiry-based research which addresses open-ended questions. None of this you have been taught in the university to do. None of this you have been taught in the university to do, and one day you are put into a lab or into an university and say, now you do research. Okay? And that's the problem. And that's what leads to distress. That's what leads to anxiety. That's what leads to a lot of unhappiness, because we are actually, putting the individual in a very discomfortable situation, very uncomfortable situation. And that's because of this. And therefore, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. But we need to understand this issue, because if you understand this issue, we can correct this situation in our life. Well, what is education? And this is not something that we are talking. NEP 2022 is not for the first time we talked about this. Socrates talked about this is 400 and 500 years before Christ. Okay? Education is the kindling of a flame not the filling of a vessel. All that we have been told for 20 years is to fill the vessel, okay? If the mind is empty, if the brain is empty, you become more creative. That's why I said you must dream, you must sleep. Because when you sleep, your brain is inactive, and that's the time when the most creative thoughts can come into your brain. Einstein in 1879 said, education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. So we all have to forget what we have learned. When we come to a PhD program or a graduate school, we have to forget everything that we have learned, okay? And lastly, Henry Ford, in My Life and Work, his biography in 1934 writes, the object of education is not to fill a man's mind with facts, it is to teach him how to use his mind in thinking. Are we doing any of these things in our universities today? Well, there may be exceptions. There are exceptional teachers. There are exceptional people even in our universities who may be doing this. But across the board, I think we don't do this very well. And that's the problem. Well, education is not a race. We have been taught that education is a race. We have to come first. And that's what we have been told day in and day out by everybody, by our parents, by our friends, by our peers, by our teachers. You have to run because you have to come first. Okay? Well, that's what I said. And you ask a monkey and an elephant to run, they will never be able to race. Okay? But that's not the purpose of education. Education is essentially problem solving. How to solve problems. How to analyze a problem. And these skills are much more important. In fact, more important in education is to how to ask a question, not how to provide an answer. All we have been taught in our education is how to give an answer. We have never been taught how to ask a question. No university teaches you how to ask a question. Okay? So that is the problem. And of course, there are some references I give here. If you are interested, you can go and read them. If you are, my wisdom comes from my broad reading and understanding this world. And I'll give you a lot of references. If you want to go and read them, you are most welcome to go and read them. Opportunities to solve multidimensional problems, designing solutions through experimentation, and working collaboratively can make a student more emotionally engaged with the subject. And this is what we don't do, in my opinion, most of it. Most of you are loners in universities, individuals. Very rarely you are in partnership with people in trying to solve problems. Well, the whole problem starts because of history. We are all products of history. And in terms of research, this history dates back to the beginning of the last century, in my opinion, 19th century, but this is what really got refined in the 20th century. And that is basically a university was created, the government funded the university, the government also laid down laws, regulations for industry. The university had a professor, a student, a problem or a thesis. He solved it, and that's what a professor was meant to do. And here I have given the gentleman who started this whole process. He is nothing but a very well-known chemist, Justus von Liebig. Okay? Liebig. And now many of you know what Liebig is. I'm sure you have used a Liebig condenser, okay, in the lab. All right. Now, what he does, this professor then trains the student, and he says, you go and work for industry. Okay? And industry creates products, solutions, things like that. This was the classical model which began in Germany at the beginning of this 20th century. Okay? And many of Liebig's students became pioneers of the German chemical industry. I give chemistry as an example because it's what I'm familiar with. In fact, this is a picture of Liebig's lab from 1842. Honestly speaking, if you look at a lab today in chemistry, nothing has changed except maybe more modern furniture and some new gadgets. Okay? Nothing has changed. You have students sitting, standing, doing something, mess in the, in the complete mess in the laboratory, especially those of you who do chemistry, and all kinds of things happening, except that now if you just replace this with a modern laboratory, you will see some computers, you will see some equipment, but essentially the same laboratory that existed at the university in Germany in 1842. Nothing has changed. And then what has happened? This is what has happened. A professor assigns a problem to a student. That's what happens, right? When we come to the university, you want to do a PhD, you go to a professor. And he says, do this problem. You have no clue why this problem was given to you. Okay? You have no clue. Okay? He says, do this problem. And you don't know what the problem is all about. Okay? So you say, okay. You don't even bother whether this problem will interest you or not. He says, professor has told me I will do this problem. Well, you take some time, spend a few years, 4 years, 5 years, try to solve the problem. Of course, you solve your problem, you get your PhD. The professor becomes famous, right? Your PhD, but who becomes famous? The professor, okay? He becomes famous. Then what do? You also want to become a professor because he says, look, he did that to me, why can't I do that to my, okay. All right, that's the only thing you are thinking, look, my professor extracted so much labor from me, he became famous, now why can't I become a professor and, torture the next generation and I become famous? Okay, and that's what you want to do, and that's what he does. And therefore he becomes a professor again, and the process continues. And this is a bad, vicious circle. Okay, this circle is not what is relevant today. This was valid when Liebig started this. Liebig worked on the system. And in fact, this is what I'm asking, is this model relevant in the 21st century? To me, it is irrelevant, in my opinion. This entire model is irrelevant. In fact, the current education system is based on an apprenticeship model, which is wrong, in my opinion. It is wrong to use student as an apprentice. It was right when Liebig did this 125 years ago. Today it is wrong. The system has been in existence since 1800 and nobody has changed it. By the way, I'm not talking about India. Nobody in the world has bothered to change it because this is a comfort zone for the professor, Why should he want to change it, okay? I mean, for him, it's a comfort zone, okay? He needs a pair of hands, students are coming. Well, they get their PhD, it's their business what they do after that. I don't care, okay? And the scientific enterprise around us has changed in the last 200 years, but we haven't changed this model of education. And that's a problem. And that's where today there is so much of discontent, not only in this country, all over the world, there's so much of discontent, there's so much of, anxiety, there's so much of people worrying about the future after their education, What is their place in the society that they are being trained for? And all these questions are looming in the minds of people. In fact, the average postdoc years now for a PhD has now become 7 years in the world. Okay? Average PhD postdoc has become 7 years today because people are waiting to understand what I need to do in my life. Well, we need to believe that there is a life beyond academia, and that's most of our universities don't teach that. Okay? I always say a professor clones a student in his own image. He clones the student in his own image. He doesn't tell him what the world is outside is because he doesn't know himself. Most professors don't know that because they have never been outside. That circle is what have been a part of that bad circle that keeps going and going. I mean, if you didn't experience the world outside, how will you guide your students what is available in this world outside and prepare him for that? That's a problem. PhD is just a training in creative and analytical thinking which prepares you for many things in life. On the contrary, without PhD also you can do many of those things. Kalam was an example. He never had a PhD. He was the most creative person, okay? All right. Now, this requires transdisciplinary education. That's the title of this lecture. This requires truly transdisciplinary education. The kind of education that we are providing today, in my opinion, is unfit for the future of this world. And I hope that we recognize that. I hope that we correct ourselves as quickly as possible. And otherwise, we will do great injustice to the next generation. Well, failure to enter academia does not make you a failed academic. Everybody wants to become a professor. If I ask an average PhD student, what do you want to do? He says, I'll do a postdoc. And then what do you want to do after a postdoc? I want to become a faculty member. If that is your only ambition, maybe you are unfit to be doing PhD. You should never be doing PhD. Okay? Because not everyone can aspire to become a professor. 5% of you, 10% of you maybe aspire to become a professor. But what about the rest? You mean there are no opportunities for the other people? There are. But you need to open your eyes for them. And that is what universities don't teach. And that's where I keep on saying that that's a problem that we have today. By the way, there's a lot of discussion on this in the literature. If you want to read, you can read. And in fact, this is a quote from this, which says the students and their supervisors must begin to regard a PhD program as a traineeship in thinking and an invaluable qualification for a diverse range of careers. If everyone involved in academic science could accept a variety of roles as the default outcome, we could change our flawed definition of success. Because today, if you don't become a faculty assistant professor in a university, you think you are a failure. Most of you will think you are a failure. Okay? Everything that you do, in a way, involuntarily, has primed you for that one single destination, including the craze for the number of papers. Okay? We could transition from a culture of failure to a healthier and happier scientific enterprise. And in fact, this is the most important part. A free and open exploration of different options requires a work environment that encourages students to take out time for career exploration. This is important, and this is what they don't teach you in the university. They make you do things from morning to night, from 9 a.m. in the morning to 3 p.m. in the night you are sitting in the laboratory, with no other experience in your 5 to 6 years of so-called PhD training. And then what happens is, most supervisors, unfortunately, arguably, know little about the non-academic careers, because very few of them have spent time outside of the academia. Because we have only rewarded them for the success in academia. And we don't take outsiders into the academia, because we ask them, what is your H index, how many papers you have. Now, obviously, a person has great experience in the society, but he cannot become a professor because he doesn't have an H index. But he's probably a great person to teach, but we don't want to bring him. Now, of course, the professor of practice concept has come. Now, there is a little bit of a flow coming from industry to academia, but it's still a trickle. It should happen to be, in my opinion, there should be thousands of such people teaching in our institutions who come from multiple backgrounds, could be from government, could be from industry, could be from social organizations. They should come and teach us many things that we have never learned in the university. And therefore, your supervisors don't have any incentive to provide students with access to such information. They have no incentive. Well, now I come to the core, which is, hopefully I'll finish it in time. I have encapsulated my thought into 10 points, okay? Now, why 10? I could have made it 20. I could have made it 5. But 10 is a nice number, okay? All right? So 10 is a nice number to remember. So 10 points. What I think is the most important points or concerns that you don't learn in the university. You may have learned, some of you may have learned, some of you may have learned it later in your life. just keep that in mind, okay? You may not have learnt it in the university. In fact, most people who are successful have learnt all these lessons, but they have not learnt it in the university, they have learnt it outside of the university later in their lives. So what are these? One is, I call this balancing breadth versus depth of knowledge. And there is a concept today which is called boundary crossing competencies. This is a very important concept in education, and this is important for science. And there is what is called many disciplines on the one side, there is called many systems on the other side. Disciplines don't make a system, okay? Disciplines do not make a system. There are many disciplines, okay? So you can be deep in a discipline, very deep in a discipline, which is analytical thinking, problem solving, but you have to be deep at least in one system, if not more. How you define those systems, the complexity of the system, and how do you go deep into a system is something that we don't learn in the university. It can be taught, in my opinion. It can be taught by choosing appropriate subjects for learning systems. You can't teach them in a discipline mode. And therefore, you have to have these boundary crossing competencies. You must be deep in your system. You must have depth in a few systems, but you must have depth in a few disciplines. Now, both are required for succeeding in life. And that is what I call a T-shaped personality. You know, when I see such people, I call them a T-shaped personality. They have a little bit of both, and you can see the T sign there, okay? Now, one of the ways to understand this is ask a few questions to yourself, because many people ask me, how do I know this, whether I have it or not? So I put some pointer questions. I won't give you the answer, it's for you to find the answer. What will you do if you cannot pursue what you are doing at present? Ask this question. Supposing I tell you tomorrow, you can't do what you are doing. What will you do? What are your interests other than the subject? Ask this question. Do you browse the contents page of a journal even though it is not in your area of direct interest? These are just pointers. There can be many questions I can raise. I could have given you 20 questions to probe yourself. Are you a T-shaped personality or not? Okay? If you are not, you start thinking about yourself, how to cultivate the T-shaped personality. Well, second, learning to solve a problem rather than finding answers to questions. Everything we are doing today is finding answers to questions. You never solve a problem. You can find an answer to a question, but somebody will say, who cares? Does it solve any problem? I don't know whether you have understood the difference between the two. Think about it. Answering a question does not solve a problem. You have to learn to connect the dots if you want to solve the problem. You have to define problems that need to be solved first, not questions that needs to be answered. And I call this thesis-driven versus problem-driven. Most of us work on a thesis-driven objective. We want a thesis. We want 6 publications before I leave. And that's my objective, because I want to get a postdoc in Taiwan. Elevate your purpose. Okay? I want a postdoc in Korea. Elevate your purpose. That's not the reason why you are spending your valuable 5-6 years of your life here. Okay? You could have done something better outside instead of spending your time in these dingy labs morning to evening. You are here because you want to solve a problem, but you are never asked, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? And that's something that they don't teach you at all. And therefore, essentially, solving a problem is connecting the dots. Okay? And this requires higher order thinking skills. This is what they don't teach you in the university. What is it higher order thinking skills? We have 4 thinking skills in all of us. Some evolved, some not so evolved. Expert thinking is what we are being trained as a PhD student. Domain knowledge, depth of understanding of a field, I can be an expert in that field. That's what's called expert thinking. Rooted in deep knowledge is expert thinking. Critical thinking is what you require to solve a problem. And that is where you kind of start questioning assumptions. Then you need strategic thinking, which is help take a long-term, high-level perspective, looking beyond the immediate problem. And lastly, you require a systems thinking, and this is what I said in the first slide. You require a discipline and a systems thinking, and this comes ability to see the interconnectedness of the problem at hand and understanding complex problems. You need all the 4 if you want to be a professional. Unfortunately, our system of training and education overemphasizes expert thinking. To some extent gives you critical thinking capabilities, but provides you no opportunity to allow you to do strategic thinking or systems level thinking. Now, without these 2, you cannot solve problems. You can answer a question. If you are an expert in thermodynamics, I can answer any question in thermodynamics. But I cannot tell you, if I ask you how thermodynamics is relevant to life, I will not be able to explain to you. Okay? How is life's process defined by thermodynamics, you may not be able to explain to me, which is what is happening today. You can be an expert, you'll write all the equations in the, all the equations you'll write in thermodynamics. But you will never relate it to the larger application of thermodynamics to the world at large, because you have not given the thinking in your brain, in your systems thinking. All right. So, in fact, Radhakrishnan, we should remember him today to some extent because he was a great teacher, but he was also a great philosopher. He gave a series of very powerful lectures in 1932 as he was what is called the Hibbert Professor at the University of London and Manchester. And in 1932, he delivered a series of lectures. And this book is available free to download. Please read this book, those of you who are interested in understanding thinking processes. He was a philosopher, but he gave a lot of emphasis on how we think. Okay? And this 1932 series of lectures is a classic lectures of Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. And what he says there is, I quote this from his book, the true test of knowledge is certainty, which is a characteristic of intuitive thinking rather than communicability, which characterizes intellectual knowledge. I hope you got this wording. What we are all trained is for intellectual knowledge. What we are not being trained is for intuitive thinking. And without intuitive thinking, you cannot use intellectual knowledge. And what he says is, intuition does not oppose intellect. So don't think that intuition is wrong. Intuition is a desirable thing to have. It does not oppose intellect, rather lies beyond it. What your intellect cannot grasp, the intuition enables you to see. And that's how great discoveries are made. All right? And what he says is, in other words, intuitive knowledge, although it does not contradict the necessity of reason, it questions the sufficiency of reason. Great words to remember. Brilliant exposition of a thought. And that, he says, we must have that intuitive ability to see beyond intellectual knowledge. And that is something is what great scientists have. And that's why they became great. How do we cultivate that? Is something that we have to understand. Well, he says that it is important, and therefore if you want to solve complex problems, and I talked about systems, you need a combination of both intuition and intellectual knowledge. Only using intellectual knowledge you can only answer questions in a discipline. If you don't have the intuitive knowledge, you cannot solve the complex problems that require. And many of us have naturally imbibed with intuition. It's all there in us. It's not that we have never awakened it. We have never, taken, because intuition was never considered as good. In fact, intuition to some extent is dreaming, okay? And people said, if you're dreaming, they said you're wasting your time, So, intuition is something that you feel somewhere inside of you, something you deeply feel. You can't explain it, but it's very important in science. And that's what Radhakrishnan said. I just wanted to bring it because it is our own Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan who has given. By the way, please read this lectures, and this is called An Idealist View of Life. That's the title of the book, published in 1932 by S. Radhakrishnan. Well, and therefore Radhakrishnan in a way says science and philosophy of unreal is as important as real. Okay? Whereas most universities teach you only real. They don't teach you unreal. Unreal means people say it's fictitious, it's fiction. But what does not exist is unreal. And what is the quest of science? To find what does not exist. And therefore you have to be in a quest for unreal. Otherwise you are only trying to discover which is already known. And therefore the great science is basically the quest for the unreal. And it says the real never ceases to exist, and that's what the Bhagavad Gita said. What does not exist is unreal. And that's what Bhagavad Gita said. Okay? Scientifically, what is unreal is imaginary. But imaginary concepts are very important ones in science. Both mathematics and physics cannot exist without imaginary numbers. Okay? Have you ever asked what are imaginary numbers? I'm sure you have read about it. Why is it so important to the concepts of science? It's not real, it's unreal. Space and time are both real and imaginary. Time is real, frequency is imaginary. X-ray diffraction pattern is a map of an imaginary lattice. There's nothing real about an X-ray diffraction pattern. I don't know whether many of you do X-ray in your lab. It's unreal. A microscopic image, but a microscopic image is a map of real crystal structure. So when you do X-ray, you are actually only looking at an unreal thing. If you can do a cryo-TEM, maybe you are seeing something real. Well, in both these cases, real and imaginary imply truth. Imaginary is also truth, is something that you must understand. What we do is real, what we dream is unreal. And that's what we come to what Kalam said, we must dream. Because the realm of science is in the unreal. Okay, science is all about unreal things. Understand that. And that's where we need to dream. And therefore, John Dewey, a man who was very well-known educationist, way back in the mid-40s, he said, every great advance in science has been issued from a new audacity of imagination. That's all. What is imagination? Is intuition. There is nothing real about it. But that was the spark that started on a journey. All right? Well, 3. Learning to teach. Students come up to a postdoctoral level without having to teach. And then suddenly they want to become an assistant professor and teach. We have accepted this as a norm. They have never taught in their life. And then one day they become an assistant professor and they have to teach undergraduate, chemistry. They are unprepared. And that's one of the reasons, sir, we were discussing in the morning, that teaching quality has disappeared. Teaching is a skill that we need to learn somewhere. Teaching does not come naturally. It has to be learned. People used to go to schools for learning how to teach. Okay? Even now, if you want to teach in a school, you must learn how to teach in a school. You have to get a Bachelor of Education degree. Okay? But we don't teach to any of our PhD students how to teach. But we expect them to teach. Suddenly one morning, they become an assistant professor, they have to teach. Therefore, in my opinion, 6 out of 10 miserably fail as teachers. Okay? A few somehow manage to do well. Well, I think that is the problem. I will not read Feynman's quotation. Feynman is a fascinating man. And he's saying if you are teaching in a class, you can think about the elementary thing that you know very well. It doesn't do any harm to think them over again. And that is very important when you teach. Is there a better way to present them? Are there any new problems associated with them? Are there any new thoughts you can make about them? If you can't think of a new thought, no harm done. What you thought about it before is good enough for the class. If you do think of something new, you are rather pleased that you are a new way of looking at it. And that's all happens during teaching. And we underestimate the value of teaching. And that's a problem. And we don't train people to teach. Teaching requires skills. First skill is we must know how to use analogy for teaching. We have to have storytelling skills. Many of you will remember your grandmother teaching you. Okay? The reason you sat with her for half an hour or 45 minutes is because she told you stories. That is a skill of teaching, is storytelling. We hardly hear stories in a classroom nowadays. You know, we see a series of PPT slides, okay, which nobody knows what the story is. A set of equations, a set of structures, a set of, things. But what's the story? Nobody knows. A lot of other things that you need in order to learn teaching skills. And we never give them an experience of how to teach, okay? And I think this is a problem that we face. Number 4, entrepreneurial skills. I don't want to spend too much time. When I say entrepreneurial skill, I don't mean start a company, okay? Entrepreneurial skill is a mindset. Skills that provide you leadership, the spirit of collaboration, how to make interpersonal relationships work, how to understand others, how to take responsibility for my own action, and how to manage complexity and ambiguity. Okay, some of these things are also useful when you start a company, but that's not needed. This is needed for everyday life. And therefore, Vivekananda told us way back in the beginning of 1800s that take risks in life. If you win, you can lead. If you lose, you may guide. So that some of us are guiding because of that, okay? We are lost, okay? So it's okay. Either way, you're okay. Okay? You need some people to guide, right? Apart from, everybody cannot be winners in this life. Well, there's a beautiful book published just 4 months, I think a month ago. I encourage you to read this book. I have read this book in the last 1 month. It is called The Entrepreneurial Scholar. It is published by the Princeton University Press in March 2025. And I think it's a beautiful book. Every PhD student must read this book. What this book talks about is, I have of course changed the context to an extent to suit today's lecture, otherwise the meaning remains the same. A PhD student is in the business of ideas. So I put italics because it looks like it's a business, right? You are in the business of ideas. The objective is not merely to learn, but to create. We are not mere consumers of information, but producers of knowledge. We have to sell our ideas. Now you can see the words business, creation, production, selling. This is all business, right? Therefore, think of yourself as an entrepreneur of ideas. Okay? You have to understand, you are an entrepreneur of ideas. That's what you are doing. And think of yourself as an entrepreneur, then you will make your life better. And please read this book. It's by a lady called Hannah Horowitz, and she has written it beautifully. Please read this book if you are interested. All right? Learning to seek a mentor and a sponsor. This is something we never teach in our universities. Okay? Building a relationship is very important for a career. Mentor, you need a mentor. A mentor is not your PhD supervisor. Okay? A mentor is somebody who is not directly involved with you in any manner, but who understands you, with whom you can have a conversation. How many of you have such mentors from where you can go and talk and listen, understand? How many of you have found such mentors? If you have not found a mentor after a year or two in a PhD program, there is something wrong with you. Okay? Your PhD supervisor is not your mentor. Please understand that. He is your guide. He is your supervisor. Okay? He is not a mentor. Okay? A sponsor is somebody who can speak for you. Okay? You need a sponsor too in your life. People who can speak for you. Not the people who write letters of references. They are not the sponsors. Okay? People who write letters of recommendation. Sponsors are somebody who are emotionally linked to you, who understand you, who can speak for you. And this is important in life if you want to be a successful professional. Jerry Watson, the famous Watson and Crick person, said in 1970 in his book Double Helix, if you have read this book called The Double Helix, you will see this quotation from him: always have someone to save you. Your PhD supervisor is not the right person. Okay? You need somebody to save you. Build a network of well-wishers, mentors, men, he said men, I'll say men and women, of consequences, and angels. In spite of all your successes and accomplishments, you will always need a helping hand as you climb the ladder of life. You have to get this somehow in your ecosystem, in your system. That's something they don't teach you in the university, how to do it. Well, 6, I will skip this very fast because this is something that you all know very well, writing and speaking. Okay? By the way, when I talk about writing and speaking, I don't mean English. It could be any language. I have no problem. Okay? If you're comfortable speaking in another language, I have no problem, but hone that skill. It's not conversation. It's not the way you talk to an auto rickshaw driver or the way you talk to a lady selling vegetables. You can be a great speaker in any language. It could be any language you choose to communicate your ideas, but you have to hone the skill. Here the context, content and conclusion is important. Writing for impact. Writing actually provides a substance to thinking. Many people say, oh, I think, but then, if you don't write, it doesn't have any substance. You have to write. And also writing is the only thing that matters to scientific professionals. Whatever you want to write, it doesn't matter. Popular science, newspaper articles, vernacular languages, write as much as you can on topics that can be anything that fascinates you. Figure out what fascinates you and start writing in whichever language you can write well. It doesn't matter which language you choose. I'm not saying write only in English. Any language you can write, but learn to write well, communicate well, and I think this is very important. And there's a very nice article that has just been published in Nature Biotechnology 2025, an open letter to graduate students and other procrastinators, it is time to write, okay? Because writing is something that we postpone, that including me, okay? Until there's a gun on your head, you don't want to sit and write anything, you know, okay? Unless my thesis is coming to conclusion, they say, where is my publication? You start writing. No, writing should be there on an everyday, you know, every day you must write, okay? Only then it becomes a skill that you can use, not a paper that you write for a thesis, you know. All right, well, and this is where the storytelling will really come in handy, because when you write, you have to tell stories. You have to learn to tell stories when you write. Read this article if you wish to. This is again in Nature some years ago, The Art of Scientific Storytelling, Framing Stories to Get Where You Want to Go. Is also a book written by the same gentleman, The Art of Scientific Storytelling. Beautiful book to read. Every PhD student must read this book. And if you want to learn to write stories, you must read widely. Please read in any language you feel like. You must read novels, stories, plays, history, biography, poetry. You can't just be reading only scientific literature. Then you can never become a storyteller. You must learn how storytelling is done, how other people tell stories to us. How can you take a novel of 300 pages and not let you sleep? Finish it in one sitting. None of your chemistry or physics book you can do that in one sitting for 300 pages. You will fall asleep. But you take a novel, you can read cover to cover in one night. Why? There's a power of storytelling. And that power of storytelling is what you have to learn. And there are enough resources to learn, I'm not saying, but one of the ways to learn is to read, because if you don't read, you can't tell stories. You know, you have to read. You have to read plays, theater, you know, novels, history, biography, anything that interests you in any language that interests you, okay? It doesn't matter which language you read. You can tell stories in English later on, but you must learn to read that in any language, okay? It doesn't mean that you have to read in English to tell stories in English. You can read in Hindi or Marathi and tell stories in English. It's possible, okay? And please do this, because if you don't have that reading habit, you can never tell stories. Don't say, I will read this book and I'll write a story. This book will not help you write a story. It will give you some help. But if you want to write stories, pick up a novel today, pick up a biography today, pick up a play today and read it, which interests you, okay? And keep reading it day in and day in and day out. And you will see one day you are able to tell great stories, okay? All right, well, this is something that we never learn in school. Understanding the relationship between science, technology, public policy and society. This is exceedingly important for science, students of science. I teach this, a kind of a 2-semester course. I have taught 2 semesters of this course in AcSIR. I've been requested to teach this in TIFR now, which I am planning to do hopefully in the next few months. A 6 weeks program to tell the scientists of TIFR. This is nothing great, it's all something we know, but it's something that we need to kind of refresh ourselves. What drives science? Why are we doing science? Don't say I want to get a PhD. That's not the reason why you are doing science. There must be some good reason why somebody is spending money on you to do science. How has this evolved? History of science, evolution of science. What's the sociology of science? It's very important for us to know, because we live in a social context. We are not an island. Scientists are not an island. We live in a society. The society has all kinds of people, half of whom they don't understand what you are doing. Have any one of you gone home and told your grandmother what you are doing? And able to tell her something about what the impact of what you are doing? I'm sure you won't even try, because she said no, she won't understand. Or even your father sometimes. Have you gone home and told your father what exciting science you are doing in the laboratory? And does he get excited with it? That's more important. Okay? That means you don't know how to tell stories. Okay? Please look at that. Go home, tell your mother, tell your father, tell your younger brother, tell your grandmother about what you are doing in the lab, and get them excited. That's the social purpose of science that we don't teach them. We don't teach in the university. How science impacts society, what role do the governments play, what is the nature of industry and academia, how does science create wealth in the society, what are the responsibilities of scientists. These are something that we hardly teach in a university. And this is very important, in my opinion, if you want to be a practicing scientist as a professional. All right. Understand this. I don't want to spend time. I can give a whole lecture on this, which I have done. It is there in the AcSIR website. Understand the ethical dimension of science and technology, because science is a social function. Science is a social function, and therefore it has to be played by certain rules. In a society, you have to play by certain rules, right? If you don't play by the certain rules, you are not considered fit to be in the society. If you are driving a vehicle on the road, you have to follow certain rules. Otherwise, you will get challaned by the police. Similarly, when you do science, you have to learn to play by certain rules. What are those rules? You must understand. And we must learn to be within those boundaries of those rules. And I call this both black, white, and gray. It's easy to follow rules if it is black. We know we can't do it. White means we can do it. But the problem comes when the color is gray. Can I do it or can I not do it? And that's where most of us make a mistake. And this talk I have given, so you can look at this if you want in my AcSIR website. It is there, my talk. It's there, okay, you can have a look at it. So I talk about dimensions of ethics in 6, it's a matrix of 6 quadrant. I call it individual, community, and society, because this is why I said science is a social function. I want to please understand that doing science is a social function. We are part of a society, and we have been given the right to perform science by the society. And we also have to look at the bottom impact on individual, community, and society. So this side is responsibility, which is individual, and the bottom coordinate is impact. And I need to look at both my personal responsibility and the impact it is making on the individual, society, or the community. And this is not an easy thing to do. It is something that we have to learn to do, and over a period of time we will learn this. But this is something that we also need some introduction now, because today science has become so competitive that ethical principles are getting violated very frequently. And therefore, we must know what is the red line that we are not allowed to cross. What is the red line that we cannot cross? Okay? Otherwise, your whole career will disappear in 24 hours. Okay? You may have spent 30 years building that career. In 24 hours, it will be down in the dumps. Okay? And you cannot rise up again. Okay? That's it. That's the end of your life. So, be careful. And I will skip this. There are lots of literature on this. I'm sure there is some amount of teaching AcSIR probably does in this area. And I call it science without conscience is but the ruin of the soul. And this was told to us by a French philosopher at some point of time. Okay? And and in fact, Mahatma Gandhi also echoed the same thing much later. This is earlier than Mahatma Gandhi, so I quote this. But Mahatma Gandhi has also said that science without a soul or a conscience is a useless science. Okay? So, 9, we have to learn to cope with rejections and disappointments. And this is inherent in every professional life of a scientist. You can never succeed all the time. In fact, you will fail most of the time. Okay? You will succeed rarely. You will probably fail most of the time. But doesn't matter. I think Kalam told us what failing means. You need a lot of things in order to manage your rejections and disappointments. I'm sure you have had nasty comments on your paper by your referees. Okay? You must have seen all those things. A nasty comment, useless work. Okay? All right? Well, we all had gone through it. All our papers have had such nasty comments. Okay? But that's part of the process of science. Criticism is something that we must learn how to take. But we also need to how to react positively to criticism. Okay? So a lot of things I always say, practice equipoise, calmness and mental equilibrium, and cultivate something called emotional intelligence, which is something again we don't teach them in the university. Okay? We are more or less focused on IQ, but not on emotional intelligence. Unless you know how to manage your emotional intelligence, you cannot cope up with rejections and disappointments. Okay? All right. Ultimately, there is another book which is worth reading. Beautiful book by Angela Duckworth. It's called Grit. Okay? It's a very small book. It's worth reading. She is a psychologist practicing in University of California. And she says that life revolves around hope. All of us, I think we all have hope, right? We only live on hope. Am I right? We have nothing else. We are all living on hope. One day I will become a professor in IIT. Okay? One day I will do this. One day I will do that. That's a hope on which we all live. Nothing wrong in it. We must have the hope. Hope is built on dreams. Okay? Hope is built on dreams. But then you can't accomplish this if you don't have three things. One is passion. The other is purpose, and the three is practice. Okay? These three P's. And practice is what you are probably doing a little bit of a learning, you know. When you do a research problem, you're studying, you're actually, a little bit of practice is what you are learning. But actually, passion is something that you have to get somewhere. If you don't have that passion. But most important, I find that people don't have a purpose. I keep asking many of my students, especially undergraduate students who come and talk to me, I said, what is your purpose? They don't know. They have just come here to study BS, MS, chemistry, biology. Why are you studying this? Don't know. Okay? What will you do after this? Don't know. I think that purpose must come. Okay, they are 18, 19-year-olds, but when they come to PhD, you are 22, 23, 24. A purpose in your life. Have you figured out what is that purpose? Purpose is not to get a PhD and assistant professor's job in IIT. That's not a purpose. That's a wish. Okay? Wishes are not purpose. Well, if you want to look at purpose, there is a whole hierarchy of thinking. And we can learn this. I don't have time to talk about it. If you read the book Grit, you will get some example of how people define their purpose. She is a psychologist who has handled a lot of people. Out of that, she has distilled a little bit of a wisdom, how people define their purpose. Okay? And each one of you must ask yourself, if you have spent 2 years in the lab doing a PhD, or even if you are beyond PhD or working, please ask yourself, what is your purpose? Don't say, I want to retire as a chief scientist. That's a wish. That's not purpose. Okay? Distinguish between a desire or a wish from purpose. Purpose has got something much more bigger in your life. Okay? And wishes do not bring you happiness. Purpose brings you happiness. Wishes most often bring you unhappiness because you don't become the chief scientist. Then you are unhappy. Okay? All right? So, how do you do that? I think we start the question, why do we exist? That's where we ask the question. Why was I born into this world?
Can each one of us give an answer to ourselves? If you figure out that answer, maybe you start looking at understanding what your purpose is. I can spend a whole lecture on this. I have a full lecture on how do we define purpose, in a life, and what are the mechanisms by which we can think about purpose in our life, but I don't have the time today, but it's important for us. And this is a pyramid. Purpose is the top of the pyramid, and the bottom is your day-to-day action, which is the tactics. The day-to-day action has to build into your purpose. Okay? Very often we don't see this connection in this pyramid in our life. Okay? We do many things on a day-to-day basis, but we don't see the connection to a purpose for which we were born, purpose for which we exist on this planet. Good. Understanding this is something that I always say, that increasingly the workplace of the future is going to be very diverse, notwithstanding what Trump has said in the last few weeks. Okay? Trump will go away after 4 years. But this issue will be, you all work in a very diverse work environment. Gender, types of gender, equity, social strata of society, people with multiple different thinking processes, a whole lot of thinking, and therefore we call this now the DEI, right? The diversity, inclusion and equity principles. This is you must ingrain them into your thinking even today as a young person, in order to live in this world where you're going to be confronted with so many such issues in your daily life. Okay? I don't have to talk about it too much today, but I always say many people, when I talk to them, they don't distinguish between equality and equity. So that's a picture, a cartoon that you can see on the web, what is equality and what is equity. Okay? But both are important. Equality is important, equity is also important in this world. And so understand that what is right for you may not be so for others, because there are people with completely different thinking around you with whom you are going to be working. What is right for you may not be so for others. Show respect and understanding. And if you can learn that, you will lead a happier life. Well, I will skip this at the moment. What you may learn, that is, I said, the spirit of collaboration, knowledge in breadth and depth, which I talked about, appreciate history, sociology, philosophy of science, chemistry if you want, ability to learn, unlearn, relearn, and courage to jump into uncharted waters, even at the risk of drowning. Okay? All right? Somebody said that, nobody did anything great, who never ventured into a sea, right? I mean, he can be on the shore all the time very safely, but he will never discover a new continent. Okay? The man or a woman who went to the sea is a person who discovered a new continent. All right? So, values that are necessary to survive life: truth, trust, humility, and lifelong learning. Life is a journey. It is not a destination. In this journey, there are no winners or losers, only survivors. Nobody will be winning and losing in this life. Those who are existing are the people who will survive. Okay? And this must be understood. It's a philosophical thought, but it must be understood clearly. This is something which you must have all seen. I don't want to read this. It's a long story. I'm sure how many of you have seen this? Anybody has seen this? Then I will not read this. Oh, okay. Nobody has seen this. I'm sorry. Then I have to read it. There was a scholar who was taking a ride in the Ganga, going towards the Sangam in a boat. And there was a boatman who was taking the scholar to the Sangam in Prayagraj. So the scholar asked that boatman, "Have you read the Veda?" The boatman said, "No." So he said that, 25% of your life is wasted. Then he said, "Have you read Upanishad?" He said, "No." He said that another 25% of your life is wasted. So by the time he was about to ask the third question, the boatman shouted And he said, the boat is sinking, there's a hole in the boat. So he said, do you know how to swim? And the scholar said, no, I've been so busy reading Veda and Upanishad, I never learned to swim. Then he said, 100% of your life is wasted. Okay? Don't become like this scholar, okay? Useless scholar. Right? So who was the smarter guy, ultimately? Who was the survivor? The boatman with a skill to swim. And the scholar with all his knowledge, was going to drown. Now, this is actually a parable from Upanishad, okay? It's a parable from Upanishad. So, even Upanishad tells you that knowledge of Upanishad is not a guarantee for survival or success, okay? Learn other things beyond Upanishads, okay? And this is, it's a very nice parable to understand that we need knowledge and talent. And all the 10 things I talked about are not knowledge, they are talent. And that's what we don't learn in the university, unfortunately. So we have all the knowledge, we have all the equipment, we have published papers in Angavante, Shemi, JSCS, okay? But somewhere along the line, it's not paying us back in our life. Why it's not paying you back? Not because your knowledge was inferior. Your knowledge is very good, but you didn't have certain skills and talent. And therefore, you are not able to use that knowledge, well. So that is the learning that you should get. Jeffrey Archer, I'm sure many of you have read his novels. He said, if you have talent and energy, you are king. If you have only energy and no talent, you are prince. If you have talent and no energy, you are a pauper. So here I use a word, talent is for knowledge, energy is for skills, okay? All right, so this is a statement he made. I think I end here. I hope I have communicated to you that there is something beyond our formal learning that we need to think about in order to become whom we want to become. Whom you want to become is your purpose in life. It's your choice. You decide that purpose, and you will make up your mind what your purpose is. Having decided your purpose, how do you take the journey forward is what I have tried to share with you as some of my perspectives on what could be useful. I'm not saying this is complete. There could be more. I could have probably written another 10, but as I said, 10 is just a nice number. Okay? Thank you very much for your kind attention. No. If there are any questions, I am ready to answer. So, yeah.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर. बहुत ही थॉट प्रोवोकिंग, मोटिवेशनल और इंटरेस्टिंग स्पीच आपने प्रदान की, और हम सबके लिए भी बहुत गर्व का विषय है कि आपने परम आदरणीय डॉक्टर कलाम जी के शुभ हस्ते अवार्ड ग्रहण किया. तो हम लोगों की भी बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है कि हम आपसे हमेशा आशीर्वाद लेते रहते हैं. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. और आज आपने जो आज स्पीच प्रदान की, मुझे लगता है और आप सबका भी विश्वास होगा, आप लोग भी इसको समर्थन करेंगे कि स्टूडेंट्स लाइफ से जुड़े हुए हर पहलू को आपने कवर किया. बहुत ही अच्छा मार्गदर्शन प्रदान किया. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर. आपके सम्मान में कहना चाहूँगी कि हर शब्द में कोई शास्त्र था, हर शब्द में कोई शास्त्र था, हर शब्द का कुछ मर्म था, और आज आपको सुनने का मौका मिले हमें यहाँ, यह हमारा जन्मों का सत्कर्म था. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर, जोरदार तालियों के साथ. और इसी के साथ हम बढ़ते हैं अगले चरण में, क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशन, और इसे कंडक्ट करने के लिए सादर आमंत्रित करना चाहूँगी माननीय डॉक्टर लेले सर को.
What a mesmerizing talk, Dr. Sivaram. Very thought-provoking, as usual. Question answer session. Please, there will be microphones available, one in this aisle, one in the other aisle. I want questions from both students and faculty because there was enough there for both audiences. So please go ahead, Dr. Sivaram.
Yeah.
Do you need us?
No, I can handle, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the talk. My question is about some quote that I read from Swami Vivekananda. It says that if there is an idea which you like, let it flow through your veins, let it remain, let it be the only thing that remains in your mind, and there be nothing else that you are thinking about and only that particular thing that you want to achieve. This is one thing which I really admire about Swami Vivekananda and his idea. And today you talked about creating a balance between a lot of things and creating a wide worldview along with our passion, purpose, practice. So I sometimes get confused. I'm right now an undergraduate. I sometimes get confused that if I try to follow this balance thing, then am I not doing the thing which Swami Vivekananda said? Take one idea, let it flow through your veins and let it be the only thing which defines you.
Okay. Now, idea is a word. I don't know exactly what Vivekananda mentioned, how he mentioned it. I don't remember that. But idea is a complex web of thoughts. Idea is not a single thing. Okay? Idea is a complex web of thoughts that flows in your mind. Okay? It should be allowed to flow. Okay? Some of them are real, some of them are unreal. All right? Not all ideas are real. Okay? Some of them could be imaginary. Okay? Some of them could be real. Let all the ideas flow. There is no problem. Ideas is not one entity or it's not one point of information. Idea is a bundle of thoughts that should flow. You have to then figure out what to do with it, right? Because having a bunch of ideas by itself is not going to help you. I need to create something out of that idea. Okay? And that's what I call the entrepreneurship of ideas. Right? So, I use the word entrepreneurship of ideas. Right? I need to distill them. I need to filter them. I need to, ask lots of questions and pick something that I can pursue. When you want to do that, you will require passion and purpose. Okay? Because you have to now take it to its logical conclusion. Otherwise, it just stays as a bundle of thoughts. So, we all have many thoughts, that not all thoughts eventually become actions. Okay? So, I am not saying there is any disconnect between what I talked about and what you talk about. I think it's a way you define idea. Idea is not a single element of, of a kernel. It is a bunch of thinking or a bunch of thoughts that is going through your head. I hope that's understood, but we can discuss more on this, but I think I'll let other people ask some questions. Yeah.
Please keep the long preambles. Don't keep long preambles to your question. Let the questions be pointed so that many can ask questions.
Hello, sir. Very nice talk we had in the morning. So, firstly, I thankful for the talk. Sir, my question to you is, you mentioned in the point 7 about public policies. So, I would like to add few comments from your side on that. How a science student, because as a PhD students, we get knowledge about technology, we get knowledge about science, but how the policymakers look at science and how we as a PhD students can contribute to the public new policies. So, I would like from you the comment.
Okay. That's not a difficult answer to provide you in a short term. I only said this should be, we must learn how to do this. Again, if you want to understand public policy, you must have wide reading habits. Okay? All right? we unfortunately in the modern generation, people's reading habits have become rather poor. So the more you read, the more you look at information that is available, you get a better perspective of the public policies. The public policies are evolving in different parts of the world. Okay, there are different evolution of this public policy. In India, we have another set of evolution going on. Now, we do get articles on them, we get people who write commentaries on them. We can read them and start framing our own thought process, but if you ask me how I should do it, maybe you and I can talk separately. I can guide you if you want some direction, because as I said, I have taught a 2-credit course, which is on this subject, and for 16 hours I have actually not taught, means I have really engaged in a discussion with the class, how to go about, understanding public policies, and how do we make ourselves better aware of public policies and its impact on what we are doing, and how we can influence. But I think it's not possible for me to answer, but I think, the first slide I showed you that you need a discipline-wise depth, and I said you need a systems, wide depth. The systems is where public policy comes in, okay? You can choose which system. You can't be an expert in every system, okay? Now, you have to choose which system interests you, okay? And you can focus on the system. Public policy is a system because there society, science, technology, economics, government, everything intersects, So it's a system. It's not a discipline. And that's why I said that it's nice for people to have a discipline depth and to cultivate some amount of interest in a systems. Now, what the systems is, we can pick and choose depending on your interest. If public policy is your interest, we can go and see how to dwell deep into the public policy landscape, learn. There are books written, there are documents available. I can share with you if you are interested, but it's a question of how interested we are. Okay? Yeah. It's possible. Yeah. Good.
Dr. Sivaram, thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
1 minute. There's somebody here. Let the lady go first.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, sir. I'm Dr. Nandini Iyer from COEP Technological University. It was a scintillating session. My question to you is that I teach engineering chemistry to the first year students in my university, and I cater to about 200 students almost in a week. So if I want to include inquiry and innovation-based learning in engineering chemistry to those 200 students, what should be my plan of action?
So we should discuss that, okay?
Okay, sure.
I cannot answer that, honestly speaking. Now, see, if it's a foundational course,
Absolutely.
okay, if that is the course, I want to distinguish between foundational learning and, what I call supra-foundational learning. So what is foundational learning must be learnt,
Right.
okay? There is no, you can't build anything without a foundation, right? So the basic foundational learning, physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, whatever it is, which are foundational learning, must be learnt by our students. Although in engineering, I don't know, you are lucky if the 200 students want to learn chemistry, but I don't know why your computer science students will want to learn chemistry.
No, they are not learning, sir.
They are not learning? Okay,
They have
good.
dropped.
Okay, they have
As
dropped.
per NEP
So I don't know who,
2020, they
mechanical
have
engineering.
dropped.
Anyway, this is a big problem in IITs.
Yes.
Nobody wants to learn chemistry, saying that why am I want to learn chemistry. Anyway, that's a separate discussion.
Sure.
But if you are teaching a foundational course, I think I don't want to mess around with it. Okay. But what we should do is that basically once the foundation is done, because foundation course is what is called this teaching the language of chemistry. Okay, it is like the alphabets. Okay, now without learning the alphabets, you can't do anything in life. So you have to learn the alphabets, and that's foundational. Once they have learned the alphabets, they can learn. They can read chemistry, through the alphabets of chemistry, and then if they got some basic foundation, then we can then go and look at some of these things. But these things, in my opinion, really come when a student is around 20, 21 years of age, when he or she has done the foundation, and now we are starting looking at some of these kinds of thought processes, how to bring them into the curriculum through a pedagogy which allows it to be brought into the curriculum. There are pedagogies that we can think of. Every one of those 10 points can be brought into a curriculum, but it cannot be brought into your foundational course. Okay, I don't think there is enough time for it to do so. Otherwise, they will never learn the foundation. So I think we can't build an edifice on a weak foundation. But once they have figured it out, maybe at the end of third year of their undergraduate, the fourth year is where we need to bring in these ideas and how to bring that into the teaching pedagogy. Okay.
Thank you so much.
I mean, but it cannot be lectured. It has to be done through other means, of learning. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Sivaram, thank you. So you said supervisors cannot be mentors. Supervisors cannot be mentors. Professor Balram, in a column about a decade ago, wrote actually supervisors should be mentors. I hope supervisors should be mentors.
Okay, mentors. Okay.
This was written in an editorial by Professor Balram, I forgot, maybe a decade ago.
See, I believe that anybody who is very intricate is like can you become a mentor for your wife?
I think.
Or can your wife become your mentor?
Yeah, it's possible, isn't it?
Little difficult, huh? If you have tried it and succeeded, let me know. No, the reason is, somebody who is very deeply involved with you, okay, can never be a mentor. A mentor has to be a little bit away, a step away, because you have your biases and you have your
that
bias.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
If you are biased, then you will be judgmental. If you are judgmental, you are not a good mentor. Okay. So the mentor has to be non-judgmental. The less I know about you, the better I am as a mentor. The more I know about you, maybe I am not a good mentor. Okay. I am not saying a supervisor cannot be a mentor. I am not saying that. All I am saying is, to me, a mentor or a guide or a buddy is somebody in whom I trust, but who doesn't judge me. Okay?
Thank you.
In fact, there are a lot of students come and talk to me, in AcSIR. And why do they come and talk to me? They can go and talk to the professor. They say, no, we don't want to talk to the professor because they have already decided that I am a useless student based on the grades. Okay? So they are coming to somebody who doesn't know what your grade is, but they have a problem. Okay? So they don't go to the professors because the professors teach them, and that professor has already told her that you are a useless student. You are not able to get marks in my course. So it's not, maybe he or she is not useless, but normally it requires a very refined mind. Balaram can be an exception. Okay?
Yes.
It requires a very refined mind for a supervisor to be a mentor, because he has to wear two hats. Okay? When he is a supervisor, he is very close to the student. He understands the strength, weaknesses of the student. Okay? He has a right to shout at the student. Although I don't know whether they do it, you guys do it nowadays. Okay? But as a mentor, I don't have those rights. Okay? I can only hear, listen, and talk. So you are right, but as I said, it's always nice to search for a mentor outside of your supervisor.
Thank you.
It's exactly like that. Your child will never look at you as a mentor. He'll look at you as a father. Okay? So, because he knows that you are judgmental.
Thank you. So the other column you must have read, the 3 C's that haunt our education today in the Hindu.
Pardon?
The 3 C's that haunt our education today. Did you read that?
Correct.
Yeah. Can you comment on it?
What do you want me to come and tell me?
First of all, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I have not read that book. What is that book
No,
called?
this is a column in the Hindu.
The Hindu?
Uh,
Okay. Who
since
wrote
you read,
this?
Sonia Gandhi wrote.
Who?
Mrs. Sonia Gandhi wrote.
Okay, I have not read it.
Okay.
I have not read that. Okay, no, I have not read that. So, I mean, I may have missed it. So, I have not read it, but I don't know what is it all about. If you can tell me what is it, I can come. Okay, got it. Or send me that article, so I'll read it, yeah.
Raise your hands. Yeah, here.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I thank you so much for the wonderful talk. I have a question regarding a small point that you mentioned at the beginning, and that is career exploration opportunities for PhD students. The fact that they spend
Can
so
you
much.
come this side, because I'm getting an echo from there.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
There is just fan or something, I'm not able.
The fact that there is so much.
Yeah, now you're better off.
Okay. PhD students have to spend so much time in the current system simply on the one problem that they are working on, that they don't get an opportunity to think about what they want to do ahead of it, that they're just shoved into the system that, okay, now I'm going to become a professor, a postdoc and then a professor. What kind of career exploration opportunities do you envision, or do you think would be ideal for a PhD student who is, well, has to be in-depth engaged with their problem? What would such look like?
No, you're talking about, this is something, I don't want to get into specifics. A PhD training should open up your mind to a variety of opportunities, okay? All right, depending upon where your interests are, okay? And that's why you have to cultivate those interests, all right? All of us are not good to do one thing in life, okay? There are many things that we can do well in our life, and your doctoral education must kind of help you to kind of understand by the time you finish 4 or 5 years, what is it that you really want to do with your life, okay? And that's a journey. Now, if you are not focused on that thinking process, that maybe you are not giving enough thought to it, that's all I am saying. But you must thought, and that's where talking to others will help, talking to mentors will help, talking to people outside of your own small life will help, because, and this is something is needed, because otherwise you don't know the world around you, as much as you should be knowing, and you have to create the opportunities to learn the world around you. In fact, by the way, today in many universities overseas, students are allowed to go out for 1 year in their PhD program, okay? Do whatever you want and come back, but be accountable for the time. Now you have to, now you can't go to my supervisor and say, where should I go? He will say, stay here. Okay? All right. But they allow you. So if you have a 4-year fellowship, they say 3 year you do your PhD, 1 year, go out. Okay, you want to go, okay, you want to do research, go to somebody else's lab and do research. Okay? Figure out what that environment is all about. You want to be engaged in social service, join an NGO, you will get a fellowship, so you are not starving for money. Okay? So you go to an NGO, work with them. Okay? See whether that fulfills your purpose in life. Okay? You want to go to industry, go to work in industry. You want to create a startup, create a startup. Okay? You want to teach children for 1 year, go and teach children, Do whatever you feel like, but you have to take the call. Now that is a way of self-discovery. I think we must allow students, in my opinion, in a 4-year or whatever the time the fellowship allows, a year for what I call discovery, self-discovery. And I think that's the time when you will learn all these lessons on your own, And see, today what has happened is the student is single-mindedly focused only on 2 things. Can I get 5 papers, 7 papers so that I can go to a postdoctoral fellowship? If that is your goal, then stay back and get your 6 papers and do what you want to do. But if you feel, no, this is not necessarily my life, I have other goals in my life, then take 1 year off, sabbatical, move out, figure out what you want to do, come back and finish your PhD. Okay? then you are not fixated on those papers, right? Because you know what you want to do. There the papers don't make a difference to me. Okay? Now the problem here is the supervisors won't like it because they don't get their papers. Okay? And therefore they will not get their rewards and awards. So they'll say, why should I have a PhD student who is not contributing to my biodata? Okay, you are ultimately, all of you are contributing to the biodata of your professors, right? All right? So that is the challenge. But I think this is something I was talking in the morning to even Professor Manoj there, saying figure out, can all our students, they will get their fellowship, go out for 12 months, come back. Do whatever you want to do.
Hi, good afternoon, sir.
Maybe you will find the purpose. Okay? Yes.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. Actually, it's a nice talk for other students who are sitting here for the self-improvement and the improvement for science of our society. How we are looking, there's something is missing for the training of passion and passion and purpose and practice in our education system. If you're thinking it's missing in our education system to train our students to think about it, to applicable for your science and society. And what's your opinion? Because CSI DG sir also is there and he is also looking into it. How to train our student to think after PhD or schooling or masters? So
Are you a teacher? Are you a faculty member?
No, I'm a student, sir.
You are a student. Okay. All right. No. See, in fact, this kind of thinking only opens your mind that these are important elements, that we need to communicate. So, first of all, we never ever ask a student what is the purpose for which he or she is doing whatever she is doing. Okay? We never ask. We never ask them, why are you doing this, this 5-6 years of grueling work? What is it for? Okay? All right. There is a Nature statistics which I didn't show. The title of the paper, if you want to read, is called the PhD Factory. It came in Nature, I think, about two years ago. It consistently shows that all in Asia, in Europe and America, okay, PhDs earn less than the undergraduates. Okay? All over the place. Okay? If you factor in the age factor. Okay? So all the three, the PhDs earn less. After 5 years, they earn less than if they had not done a PhD. I'm talking about in those countries, if they just taken a job after their undergraduate degree, they are earning much more because that 6 years they have climbed up the ladder, and here you are starting off in the beginning. So nobody can tell me that I am doing PhD to earn more money. If you are doing that, you are under illusion. Okay? So you are not going to get more money. If you want to get a better income, you probably can do something after your bachelor's or master's and get a better income. Okay? So that's not the goal. You are here for some other goal, some other purpose you are here for. And therefore, that's what I said. It is that purpose that will give you the satisfaction. Okay? So that whatever you talked about. Now, this is something you cannot teach. This has to be inculcated in us over a period of, there is nothing like a course for this. I mean, there is no course. There are certain life coaches that claim to teach you how to find your purpose. Okay? There are some life coaches. They try to say that we will help you find your purpose, but I don't think they are very successful. I think each one of us have to find our own purpose by asking a lot of questions to ourselves. Okay? And if you ask those difficult questions over a year, day after day, you will figure out why you are here for, and what are you here for. Okay? So purpose is existential. Purpose is not career. That's what I said. Purpose is existential. Why was I born into this world? Okay? Now this is bordering on philosophy, and therefore I think it is not easy to teach this, but we can engage in discussions, debates, in trying to find the answers. But nobody can, you have to find your own answers. Nobody can teach to find an answer. We can only stimulate, we can only provoke thinking. But because purpose is existential. It's not career, it's not making money, that's not purpose. Okay? All right.
Okay, one last question if there is, otherwise, one last question, please.
There is a documentary, Schooling the World.
Anand?
There is a documentary available, I guess, on YouTube as well, Schooling the World.
Okay.
Are you aware of it?
No, I have not seen this. Send me, I would like to see it.
Okay. No, my question was regarding that, but because when you go, when it becomes a philosophical question, then we should also ask what is the purpose of schooling people in one way only.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
I agree.
yeah, but if,
I agree.
yeah, I would like to discuss.
See, in fact, that's one of the reasons today there's a mass movement in many parts of the world to what is called homeschooling. Okay? In the US today, 15% of the population do not send their children to school. Okay? I can share the statistics with you. 15% of the population do not send their children to school because they say it's counterproductive. Okay? So they have got what is called this homeschooling, and this concept of homeschooling is now becoming very common in the world. Now, so I don't know this documentary, but schooling as a process, as if we all have to be born and at the age of 5 we have to go to school and then finish something at the age of 15 and go somewhere. I think these are all very, very conventional thinking. So many people are questioning this now, okay? And they are asking, is there an alternative way of doing it? And there are people who argue that there is an alternative to doing this. Whether it's right or wrong, I am not the expert today to talk about. But you are right, we need to, fundamentally we can raise the question, whether it is necessary or not, And therefore, I know at least several of my friends' children, not my friends because they are my age, but their children are not sending their children to school, So, and they are all doing what is called homeschooling now, and they feel that nothing is lost. Okay. But this is a different thinking process. Yes, yeah.
Whether you send the children to school or you do homeschooling, basically you stick to a curriculum. And there is this question that can you really stick to one curriculum for the whole population? So I guess it's out of this, but yeah.
We can discuss this. I am not an expert in the schooling level, but there are people who are fundamentally questioning this process. There are people who are fundamentally questioning this process today, and I'm sure there's a lot of literature on this, being discussed. I don't know what is the right approach. I'm not able to comment on it, but I always believe that nothing should be considered as a sacred cow. Everything should be asked, questioned, and reasoned, because we are living in a very dynamic society. The society is changing in a very rapid way, and therefore, if we were educated in one manner 50 years ago, I don't think 50 years from today people will get educated in the same manner. And in fact, this has to be fundamentally questioned, not only at the school level, at the university level, at the post-university level, like PhD level. I think we have to completely open up the box and say, there are no holy cows, there are no sacred cows, everything is open, everything is fair, we will relook at it, based on the needs, And if we do that, I think the society will evolve better, But I don't think we should simply say because my father did it, my grandfather did it, I should do it. I think it's a wrong way to do it. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sivaram. We will come to the end of this question and answer session. I think the success of this lecture is really to open your minds to more questions and enable more conversations between each other, because there are no easy answers and perhaps no one unique answer to any of these questions. But the fact that it opens your thinking and allows you to converse with each other is really the success of this lecture. So thank you so much, Dr. Sivaram, for giving us that opportunity. And I will hand over the podium to Dr. Swati ji for the final conclusion of this event.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद डॉक्टर लेले सर। इसके पश्चात मैं सम्मानित प्रोफेसर मनोज धर और प्रोफेसर अजय धर जी को भी मंच पे सादर आमंत्रित करना चाहूँगी ताकि आगे की कार्रवाई हम लोग संपादित कर सकें। कार्यक्रम की इस कड़ी में मेरा निवेदन है प्रोफेसर मनोज धर, डायरेक्टर AcSIR से, कि वे कृपया AcSIR की ओर से आज के कार्यक्रम के मुख्य अतिथि माननीय डॉक्टर शिवराम जी का सत्कार करें। आप सबकी जोरदार तालियां अपेक्षित हैं। स्मृति चिन्ह और ये सत्कार प्रतीक है आपके प्रति सम्मान का सर। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और कार्यक्रम के अंतिम चरण में बढ़ते हैं। कार्यक्रम की अंतिम लेकिन बहुत महत्वपूर्ण गतिविधि वोट ऑफ थैंक्स, और सादर आमंत्रित करना चाहूँगी प्रोफेसर अजय धर जी को।
On behalf of AcSIR, it's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. First and foremost, I would like to thank our beloved Dr. S. Sriram for agreeing to deliver this wonderful lecture. Dr. Sivaram has been closely associated with AcSIR, and we are privileged to have him here today to address all the students with his words of wisdom. Thank you, sir, once again, for sharing your inspiring thoughts with our young minds. Our heartiest thanks also go out to the Director NCL, Dr. Ashish Lele, for kindly agreeing to host this lecture and always supporting the AcSIR activities at NCL. Our sincere thanks to all the AcSIR faculty members at NCL for being a part of today's function. I also gratefully acknowledge the support of AcSIR coordinators and their teams for hosting this event at NCL. Last but not the least, I wish to sincerely thank all the AcSIR students here and online attending this lecture for being a part of today's event, and I wish them all the success for their future research endeavors. Thank you.
आपको भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर, और इसी के साथ कार्यक्रम समाप्ति की घोषणा करती हूँ। आप सभी का दिन शुभ हो। नमस्कार।